Now, I don't normally start off with a loser, but Checo, you stank. My goodness, that was a disgrace, wasn't it? This and the Singapore Grand Prix, I thought that was just an isolated incident. No, Suzuka, a driver's track. This was even worse. This was just scrappy. The whole lap 1 situation with Hamilton, nearly running him off the road, that was really rough. Then dive-bombing into Magnussen when it was clear he was not going to make the overtake, just assuming that it's a Red Bull and a Haas would get out of the way. No? Kevin Magnussen? Remember the whole thing with Hulkenberg and the balls? This was just dire. And on the same weekend when Red Bull won the constructors title. And you could really tell that they really did not want to talk about Perez, because in all social media about winning the title, Max was right there with Christian and Marco. I did not really see pictures where Sergio Perez was there. You can clearly tell they did not want to talk about him. And then, okay, the whole weird thing about retiring twice? That was basically to get rid of that 5-second penalty so that it doesn't get carried over to Qatar. That's a technicality that you have to do. And it meant that he was then 20 laps down, went out, and then came back in again. So, weird F1 screwy rules, eh? I'm sorry, Checo, but that was just terrible. On a weekend too, where Liam Lawson actually did pretty well, so you are going to the dark bit. But okay, on a lighter note, one of the big winners was of course the trophy, which was KISS activated, and Max Verstappen actually honoured the bargain and kissed the trophy, and it lit up the colours of the Dutch national flag. But speaking of... Oh, this was good. An incredible performance from McLaren. Their first double podium since Monza 2021, and only the third in about a decade, and have managed to establish themselves as one of the top 4 teams currently in Formula 1. Back where they belong. They've also slashed the deficit to Aston Martin by a third in one race. So it's actually doable that they could get 4th place in the constructors. Whether they can actually get to P3, I don't think so. I think it's pretty much sealed off from them, but 4th place, after the start they had this year, I would take that. They handled their driver swap relatively well, with Norris complaining a little bit, and admittedly, Oscar doing what he does best and being a little bit renegade into turn 1, but they managed to at least get it done, and it really didn't impact their race overall. I mean, there were other teams that did it worse. And then, my boy, Oscar PS3, the first rookie to actually get a podium in their first season since Lance Stroll. Despite being 10 seconds behind Norris, I feel this has actually been a breakthrough race for him, because not that long ago, back at the Hungarian Grand Prix, we established that the weakness that Oscar Piastri has is tyre degradation. He could not figure out how to deal with race tyres towards the end of a race, and he would usually fade away. But now that's actually been fixed. Yes, he was quite a ways behind Lando, but he was able to preserve the tyres enough to keep Charles Leclerc behind, and towards the end of the race actually pull away, so going from about 3 seconds ahead of Leclerc to being 7 seconds ahead. And even Charles himself admitted that eventually Oscar was able to get away from him, so 3rd place was just not on the card. So he's actually learning really quickly, and at Suzuka, a place he's never been to before, one of his best races of the season. Not just because he got a podium, but because he's actually starting to fix that tyre wear problem, and I'm really excited to see what he can do in 2024. Then he'll be fully up to speed, but he's now broken the top 10 in terms of the Drivers' Championship. But yes, I will say, he was very lucky with that virtual safety car. He was the only one of the frontrunners to actually make use of it, and even then, that was just dumb luck, because I think even McLaren had no idea that a virtual safety car was being pulled when they brought Oscar into the pits, because yes, that tyre error with the medium was still a bit of a problem, but hey, worked out for him in the end, considering that twice he's actually been unlucky with the safety car being called out after he's pitted. This was one back in return, so, you know, karma works in mysterious ways. But okay, Max Verstappen, emphatic performance, what more can I say? I actually predicted in my predictions video that he would win by about 20 seconds or so, and lo and behold, he won by 19.3 seconds. But what we actually saw was that McLaren were closer, but Red Bull are clearly in the pound seat, at least with Max Verstappen. Which, speaking of Red Bull, I mean, come on. Congratulations, Red Bull. You won the Constructors title quite convincingly. And even though, technically, Max could win the Constructors for you on his own currently, I'm still going to be calling this a team effort because we've got to remember here, F1 is a team sport. Getting that title wasn't as slick because they didn't do it with a 1-2 finale, but hey, oh well, they got it. Ferrari, I would say this was a good boost for Leclerc, being ahead of Carlos Sainz, and Carlos was sort of ignored in terms of strategy, despite the fact that it was his pick call and strategy with the DRS that won Ferrari the Singaporean Grand Prix, but oh well. They were clearly the third fastest team, and they were able to establish a good amount of points and get a little bit closer to second place in the constructors. So this momentum has been improving, and the floor was enough to actually keep them ahead of Mercedes. And I feel this could be really, really good. McLaren's not going to catch them in terms of the constructors, but this will be enough to get Mercedes really, really panicking. And they've already got a lot of problems at the moment. I'll talk about that in a moment. So for Leclerc, I would describe him as a winner as well, because he's managed to actually establish that, hey, he's pretty good too. He did really well. And okay, I'll give credit where credit is due. But Ferrari, pretty good job. Liam Lawson, another winner. Once again, beat his teammate. Even though it's been made clear he's not going to be racing full-time in Formula 1, at least not yet next year, he was actually wanting to have a point to prove even more so. Right now, this is exactly what he needed, to actually race against his teammate, and he won. Not by much, but he was racy. Those first couple of laps when he was fighting against Tsunoda, that was crazy. And he was able to hold his own fairly well. And he did miss out on some points, P11 being a very common statistic for AlphaTauri. They really should get a room, honestly. They've been together so often. Red Bull have actually made it clear that, okay, he may not have gotten a race seat for next year, but they are going to be doing more with him. He will be attending every single race next year, and he will be doing more work in the simulator, closely with Red Bull Racing, the main team. So we've got to remember, Liam is only 21. He will be 22 next year. And Oscar and Lando, they're in their early 20s, so it's not like Lawson is 26 or 27 and this was his last chance to be in Formula 1 for a good amount of time. This is still okay. I'm a little bit sad we're not going to get to see him race full-time next year, at the moment, but okay, this was yet another good performance to justify that, hey, this kid deserves a full-time chance. Now we're getting to the drivers and teams that are a little bit, they were neither good or bad, and we're starting off with Mercedes. Yes, they got a double points finish, they got 5th and 7th, not too bad, not too shabby, considering they really didn't bring that many upgrades to the table, and they were really worried about what they were going to be like at this time out. And in practice, they were not good at all, so they managed to salvage some points. Fair enough. However, we got a problem here. And I want to talk about this more in a bigger video, maybe tomorrow. But suffice to say is that we've got a Rosberg Hamilton problem here, folks. They are actually, in terms of skill, kind of similar. And I know that a lot of people are going to be saying, oh, George Russell was really, really slow. Well, he was on a one-stop strategy that he wanted to do. He wanted to try and emulate Carlos Sainz's strategy about using the DRS to keep Carlos Sainz behind. And Carlos acknowledged that they were using his trick against him. But Mercedes couldn't follow through with it. They weren't quite sure what to do. Because at this moment, George Russell has got a problem. He was meant to be the future of Mercedes, but no, that's not happened. They're both contracted to 2025. Lewis is around for a little longer. That problem's an issue. So George is now maybe having to play second fiddle to Lewis for another couple of years. That is very, very annoying for him. He's trying to establish himself. George was too stubborn and Lewis was too desperate, trying to get past. Team orders, though, Mercedes were just a little bit anonymous. They did then eventually try and tell George to move over, but it was too late. Lewis couldn't catch up to Leclerc, and we didn't get potentially a fight for fourth, even though Lewis had the faster tyres. It was just a little bit of dithering. Maybe a little bit of PTS or something like that regarding Rosberg and Hamilton from 2016. But I think we're going to have to be establishing team orders soon. And Hamilton, oh yeah, he was starting to get a little bit icy with George, because afterwards in Parc Ferme, they did not acknowledge each other. And Lewis was throwing shade against him in the press conference, saying, hey, why was George doing that? He's not fighting me in the championship. What was the point of that? So I'm getting a little bit concerned about Mercedes right here. This is not what they need right now. Alonso, it was okay, despite the fact that Aston Martin has run out of steam, and I think that's perfectly fine considering their 5-year plan. He did manage to score some points, and had things not gone the way they did and their strategy actually working as intended, he might have been 6th place. He might have been even better, but I think we've now got some more Fernando Alonso radio quotes for the good books. We got the likes of, do something! And you're throwing me to the lions! Ironically, I find this really funny. Esteban Ocon was one of those lions, and a couple of years ago, Fernando did tell Esteban to defend like a lion, and what was he doing? Defending like a lion. Oh, Fernando, be careful what you wish for, mate. And speaking of Ocon, I will put him here, because he did do okay. because he did have a really scrappy beginning part of the race, being one of the people affected by lap 1, but he managed to actually get his way back up the field with his one-stop strategy to get to P9, albeit a little bit awkwardly with a team order thing right at the end, and it wasn't really communicated properly, so that was a bit of a disaster for Alpine, but I'll save my thoughts for that for tomorrow's video alongside the Mercedes debacle. So do tune in for that, and also subscribe for when it actually drops in your inbox. Okay, the losers. Lance Stroll, again. Now, of course, he did have a rear wing issue, which meant that did affect his race, so he was a little bit hindered there. And he did actually get quite a ways up the grid. He did get to P11 before he had to retire, so that wasn't too bad. So this was one of his better race starts, but Q1, again, he went out. And this is now getting to the point where he has actually now gone out in Q1, nearly half of the Q1 sessions that we've had so far. That's the most, even more so than Logan Sargent. Oh dear, that's not good. It was more bad luck than just being bad, but something needs to be said, because there were worse losers. As I said at the beginning, Albon was a loser, but that was just down to bad luck. He had a really scrappy lap 1, but that wasn't his fault, and he would have been on for a decent shout of a point or two, and it turns out that that Gulf Williams livery is really bringing them bad luck. Maybe they should go back to the original one. But he was part of the whole squeezing situation with Bottas and Ocon. Oh, Bottas, oh my god. I mean, Bottas was already anonymous throughout the entire weekend. I forgot he was even driving again. This isn't the first time I've said that this season. And then to top it all off, the next loser, one of the other losers I would consider maybe putting in the dark bit by this much, was Logan Sargent. Oh my god. Oh dear. I mean, you thought that Mick Schumacher caused more damage. I think Logan's really going for the gold here. I think that the Williams mechanics do not like him at the moment. This is the second time they've had to rebuild his car in as many weeks. The Williams team does not have the resources to keep doing that, Logan. I know you're a rookie, I'm trying to be forgiving, but you're lucky that James Vowles likes you and is willing to defend you. James Vowles didn't even decide to put Logan Sargent in the seat at the beginning. He inherited Logan, but he's running with it, and I appreciate that. I respect that from James for wanting to stick to his guns with the Williams Academy and all that, but this is getting to borderline naivete and putting faith in something that you may not necessarily want to put faith in, and it's looking a little bit more shallow, like you're only keeping Logan because he's an American, and I feel bad for Logan, I really do, because there's a lot of pressure, because Williams had the only vacant seat left. Everyone's eyes are on Logan about who's going to replace him. Is it going to be Mick Schumacher? Is it going to be Felipe Drugovich? Is it going to be somebody else? That dive bomb, that locking up and then colliding into Bottas, that was, no. And then that Q1 crash, oh dear. It's getting very hard to defend him. Then I would have to say Yuki Tsunoda, mainly for the fact that this was at his home race where he really wanted to put in a good performance. He did qualify in P9, which was really good in that upgraded car, so we actually got to see him finish a race, but in the end, Lawson outraced him. It wasn't the worst out there. Yuki has now actually secured his future for at least another year, but I think this might be a good warning for him, that you maybe should be thinking about an escape plan to maybe being a reserve driver at Aston for 2025, to then maybe replace Stroll going forward alongside Alonso. Or if Alonso retires, going in as the driver with Lance. So I think that might be a good plan at the moment, Yuki. It's good to go and get the feelers out there because you got lucky. I don't think Red Bull is destined for you because they want to have either Liam Lawson or Daniel Ricciardo. But hey, at least you're going to be with us for another year, which is good. So going back to Oscar, if you want to find out that it's not just me thinking that he's the bee's knees, it's the McLaren boss. Watch this video next to find out more.